We have done stage 1, stage 2. Now let's finish it here in stage 3. This is mostly going to be finished sanding. All the shape was done by rasps and more coarse materials. Now, don't get too excited and jump from stage 1 to stage 3 without shaping everything really well with a rasp. It's just too much work to try to sand everything and shape it. Really, all we're doing is cleaning off all of the rough rasp marks and spoke shave marks to get to here. And this is just a matter of sanding. So we are going to go from 100 grit paper and then to 120, 150, and then 220. And this one is also 100 grit paper, and it's used to sand off the shank. I'll use this one as my sample. Just like when we're spoke shaving, put that thing in your gut and hold it. So you can see I'm starting to clean off right here, but I still got work to do there and on the very top. But it is starting to clean off very well. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I get it nice and smooth. This rounds over and takes out any big bumps or flat spots. You can use these. So this gives us our profile. This is 2.5 inches from the heel end. So measuring in 2.5 inches, that's about there. Right, it wants to look about like that. And you can see that that profile is doing pretty good. On this stage 3, it looks really nice too. On the stage 2, now it doesn't mean that your neck has to be precisely this shape. If you like it more square, that's okay, or some like it more pointy, that's okay too. It's just a guide. Most like this flavor or this shape in the neck. This one is 1 1/8 from the nut line. So, right, the nut line is that line right there. So come back from the nut line 1 1/8. And that's, so you can see I still got a little bit more to go to bring that down. Those can help guide your work. Now eventually, right, we got to get rid of these coarse 100 grit marks too. So I'll move to the 120, 150, and 220. I won't be using this, however. I'll be using hand sandpaper and going with the grain. When you go across the grain, it sands more aggressive, but it looks better when you go with the grain. So it makes sense for you to do most of the sanding across the grain if possible, and then eventually you're going to go with the grain like this. The same thing goes here and the same thing goes here. The heel, the grain direction goes like this. So you'll sand that direction here, up that way, and like that. Okay, let's talk about this now. That wants to be done with a flat sanding block. And we're going to try to get rid of all of those sanding marks, which are very coarse. Those are like 60 grit. Even this one, the sticky back, is 120 grit. So I'm going to change it or put on 100 grit and just hold it by hand, going with the grain. This setup isn't all that great. It's a little bit wobbly. a better setup, something like this. That's nice. Now I can put all of my pressure on the back of that headstock. And I'm going to keep going with this 100 grit paper until all of these have been removed. Once I'm done with that, I'll move up to 120, then I'll move to 150, and then to 220. Now in here, that's all curves. So we have different sanding blocks of different diameters that you can use. This one looks like it'll work pretty good in most of those spots, except for right there. I'll probably have to go a little bit narrower. But the same thing goes. I'm just going to take 100 grit paper. And start cleaning that up. And I've got to use 100 grit paper until all those coarse crevices are gone. So look on this side, and I still have some right there. So I'm going to keep going. It's okay that I go across the grain like this until the very end, and then I can go with the grain. Same thing on this side. Let's compare it to stage 3 here. Look how smooth this is. Very nice, very smooth. That's what I'm going for. Now to get into here, I'm going to have to pull it out of the clamp. And clamp it down to the table. Keep your sandpaper clean. Blow it off frequently, or rotate sides so you got a fresh piece, and it'll make sanding much easier. That's nice. So now that I got all that rasp out, now I've got a bunch of coarse 100 grit. I'll swap over to 120 grit. Progressively down to 220. All right, let's talk about the heel. Same thing goes here. Probably start with a bigger Another thing I want to point out is oftentimes here, right here, oftentimes you'll get a little bulge from there to there, or like that. So you're on the line right at the heel, but then it bulges out. And you want to keep that nice and straight, right? Using that as a straight edge. I want it to continue all the way over. And to do that, if you have a bulge right there, then you can use a sanding block and work it right there over. Start with 100 grit paper. Start using a round, and I'm going to keep going with this 100 grit until all those are gone, and then I'll move up to 120, 150, and then 220. I have to come here and clean that up. That I'll either do with a sanding block like this. You can go over to the horizontal belt sander also and sand that off. Though The horizontal belt sander is 100 grit, so you'll still have to do 120 here and 150 and 220. Still stay nice and tight on that line. Now, a warning to you. Oftentimes students will want to put their neck in the vise like this, and you've got to be super careful about doing this. Like when you're working on the headstock, because there is only 1/8 of an inch of wood holding this neck together right there, and you will just crush it. You'll put a crack right through your neck. So, not recommended. If you're going to clamp it here, you can use the heel because it's solid and put some kind of a wedge in there to help you, or the headstock. But don't be clamping in the shank this direction. This direction is okay, but not that direction. So if I was to work on this here, I think I'm going to clamp it down like this. And let's put a couple of blocks here to help us. Got just a little bit more of bandsaw markings in there that I can feel. This work is just a labor of love. There's no shortcut in the work of getting this sanded to beautiful. It's pretty good. I think I'm almost ready to move to 120 there. I'll do the same thing here on the headstock, or on the very end. Same thing there. Here, I'll move the spindle. After we're done with stage 3, the fretboard is going to go on right there. This is the template for the fretboard. It sits back 1/4 of an inch because that's where the nut goes. And notice that there is still about a 1/16 of an inch of material here. That's going to get sanded up. We'll glue the fretboard down, and then we'll sand that up so that it matches.